we came from very humble beginnings, and I remember the Investment Services Act, enacted in November of 1994, literally paved the way for the development of the funds industry as we know it today. And I would describe that period with one word: two. What does this mean? Well, at that time in 1995, we had just two funds. We had two fund management companies providing fund management and administration, and we had two global custodians. So that's where we started from. Intrinsically at that time, the industry was very much led by the local financial institutions, the credit institutions in the main. At the time, Bank of Valletta set up a fund management company in 1995, followed shortly by Midland Bank, today HSBC. And these two credit institutions started launching investment funds, retail investment funds, for distribution through their branch network, their respective branch network. So it was very much driven by insular demand, by internal demand. However, in the year 2000, when the MFSA launched the professional investor fund regime, I think that kick-started the sort of internationalization side of the funds industry.
I think it was very intelligent of the jurisdiction to allow foreign service providers to service those funds, because it allowed Malta to create, if you like, sufficient critical mass that then spurred the growth in the services sector. So many more administrators started coming to Malta as a result of the fact that they saw more critical mass, more funds being set up here. So that was an important decision. I would also say one of the biggest drivers has definitely been the regulator itself. Chris rightly said, very approachable, a very high level of regulation. If you like, everyone today talks about the Alternative Investment Fund Management Directive. Well, Malta has been regulating the hedge fund industry for quite some time now.
The single regulator that we have, the MFSA, is very, very well respected. It's a strict authority, but equally it's flexible and approachable. And by that I mean that it operates an open door policy, whereby fund promoters can meet with the head of the MFSA, Professor Bannister, and discuss how their fund structures will fit in with local regulations. We've also developed here a substantial infrastructure, including specialist law firms, the big four accountants, fund administrators, custodians. And in HSBC, you've got one of the world's largest global banks as part of what is a very robust banking system. The Maltese workforce is very, very well educated and importantly speaks English and is still relatively low cost. We have a beneficial tax imputation system, which is transparent and also OECD approved. And we are, as a country, on the OECD whitelist. But probably the biggest catalyst for this growth dates back to 2002. Malta introduced a statutory framework for redomiciliation. That gave the benefits of funds not having to change their corporate existence. Investor gains and losses did not need to be crystallised. Performance was still measured against the original investment. And importantly, there's no obligation for funds, certainly extraordinary and qualifying PIFs, to use local service providers. And last but not least, Malta's comprised of some great people.
Our cost base is more competitive. I mean, typically, if you take, for example, salaries, our salaries would be between 50% or 60% of what they would pay in Luxembourg and Ireland, typically.
50 to 60%?
Yeah.
Even with the economic crisis in Ireland?
Well, I mean, there, I suppose there's no excess supply, so yeah, you would have to.
So they're on holiday in Ireland today, so you can say.
Yes, yes. I mean, interestingly, for example, I've heard of a situation where a local fund administration company who has set up in Malta is now thinking about sourcing the fund administration to Northern Ireland, for example. So yes, there is impact because of the financial crisis.
They're outside the euro, though.
Yeah.
Even Ireland.
And even if it comes to rental of office, fund administration costs,
I mean, normally setup costs for a fund in Malta, I mean, a plain vanilla hedge fund, you're looking at around 20 to 25,000 euros, and that would be That would include the preparation of all the legal documentation, the constitutional docs, all the application docs of the MFSA, and the management of the licensing process with the MFSA. And when you think about that within the context of what Steve said, if you have a fund which is 10 million, 15 million, the expense ratio in the first few years is highly critical, because ultimately that will have an impact on the performance of the fund. So, finding a cost-competitive jurisdiction which has all the necessary regulatory and legal framework in place to accommodate the fund structure, and ensuring that the setup costs in particular and ongoing costs, do not have a significant negative impact on performance is critical. And if you think that from a valuation point of view, you can amortize the setup costs over a 5-year period, then you're looking at around 5,000–6,000 euros on a per annum basis, which will hit the valuation, which on a 10 million fund is acceptable. Even on the ongoing side, I mean, if you look at admin fees, you're looking at minimums of around 15,000 to 20,000 euros. It very much depends on the features of the fund. Audit fees, you're looking at around 5,000 to 7,000 euros. So again, if you add them up, I think you're looking in the region of 30,000 to 35,000 euros ongoing costs. Then again, so on balance, you will find that makes setting up a fund with 10–15 million euros, Malta as a accompanying jurisdiction.
Mm.
Chris, I think you wanted to say something.
No, the points have been very, very well covered by Steve and Kenneth, but I would definitely reiterate the view that our cost advantage is reflected by the fact that we have a number of startups and smaller funds here historically, but my observation in terms of trends over the last 6 months is that larger funds definitely are coming here, taking advantage of this very developed infrastructure that we've now built.
Malta, what's the best structure? Plane.
Well, essentially, I mean,
What, fly in a plane here?
like any other fund management company, there are regulatory requirements which are are strong but at the same time flexible. Obviously, a fund manager also has full access, as Steve mentioned, to Malta's double taxation treaty network, which is very, very important and something that quite often fund managers maybe don't necessarily think of.
And local presence.
Local presence requirements are part of the flexibility, as I was saying. Obviously, you do have to have local presence, local office space, and the like. But it's not that you have to be here with 100 employees on day one, and that isn't essential. So I think it is all targeted to the approach taken by the jurisdiction to allow a build-up of critical mass. We go back always to that same argument. Even in the fund sector and in the services sector, today 47%. You said it's too low. Kenneth rightly said it's too high. I remember way back in 2003 when all funds coming to Malta were essentially coming with ready-made service providers. So from nil to 47% in 5 years. It's gone from literally. And the same thing in the fund management sector. I think the package for fund managers in Malta is designed to attract fund managers to come here and start building up gradually. And that suits the jurisdiction as well. Also in terms of growth of competences, intake of newly trained people from the various education institutions. So the approach is, in my opinion, the correct approach we take.
But you don't need, just to throw some light on this, you don't need actually to have a physical fund management company, a Swiss fund management company in Malta to manage a local hedge fund, because we have quite a number of funds in Malta which are managed by fund management companies based in Switzerland, which fall under FINMA, or are a member of one of these SROs like Polyrig and similar institutions. In Malta we also have, and this is unique to the PIF regime, a structure which will allow funds to be set up on a self-managed basis, which means that the investment management, rather than having the actual outfit, be it in Malta or in any other foreign country, the investment management is vested within the board of directors of the scheme, and the board then would set up an investment committee which need to consist of 3 people. They would need to meet in Malta, they would need to hold the majority of their meetings in Malta, but the actual day-to-day portfolio management carried out by the portfolio manager within the committee may be done outside of Malta. And this is an important flexibility extended to small hedge fund startups, where the fund manager, the runaway fund manager, might not have a physical operation. But he has, the money of maybe of family and friends, and he wants to start up a hedge fund, build performance, and then market that aggressively overseas.
Yes. We also have the situation with the MOUs between Malta and other countries, where and again, purely from our experience, because there's an MOU with South Africa, that South African fund managers are recognised here to manage funds because of that MOU between the two countries, two regulators.
Somebody's asked the question very simply: how will UCITS 4 change Malta? As a lawyer, do you want to take that? And perhaps we should give that one also to an auditor as well. Will it change it at all? Because there's not really much in UCITS 4 that's very different from UCITS 3.
I think from a accounting auditing point of view, I mean, it's just another vehicle to add to the suite of available products effectively. From the legal point of view, it's going to be introduced, I believe, in July, is it?
Yes.
July.
So
July.
I think to latch on to that, what is very interesting with UCITS 4, obviously because of the possibility of passporting the fund manager now, I think Malta and the package, if you like, for fund managers that we were discussing before will render Malta even more interesting as a base for fund management companies managing UCITS funds in other jurisdictions as well. So that is something I think very important.
So sorry, go on.
No, I totally agree with you, David. And I do think that UCITS 4 is an important piece of regulation coming in, because I think the efficiency package that is really the crux of UCITS 4 in terms of master feeder structures, fund mergers, improved communication between the regulators, therefore the ease of passporting, that's very, very important. I think what it does is it further enhances the UCITS brand. Now, I recognise the fact that there are other jurisdictions that probably are higher profile within the UCITS industry today than is Malta. But I think with the introduction of more custodians and the regulations that we have here, it's an opportunity for Malta to grow more into that space.
I think we're increasingly seeing UCITS being set up here. So if you look at the figures in 2009, because we don't have the actual detailed numbers for 2010. I think the percentage of UCITS of the overall universe of new funds coming to Malta will increase. I mean, in 2009 we had 105 new funds, 3 of them UCITS, very small. But last year we were increasingly seeing UCITS, some of which, as I highlighted, were domiciled and converted into UCITS and passporting into Europe. And this is interesting for us, because normally on the alternative space you get private plans. So they are selling to the institutional and high net worth market space. UCITS are different, because you get these being passported to different jurisdictions. So as David rightly pointed out, you may have a significant acceleration in the NAVs of funds in Malta. I think in the region of 500 funds by 2011, or to 550, what's in a number ultimately, I think we'll be around that figure. But definitely I think we'll see an increase in the number of UCITS funds being established in Malta. In terms of AUAs, AUMs rather, it's very difficult to predict, quite frankly, because it very much depends on the nature of the business coming to Malta. So I will not put a figure to that, because I'd literally be finger in the air.
But from what just before we go to Andrew, am I right in saying in your answer you're slightly disagreeing with the others, and you're saying perhaps there will be more growth on the mainstream side than the alternative side? It
will remain driven. I mean, if you look at the numbers, 102 out of 105, it's driven by the alternative space. So there's no quibbling that. What I believe is that we will see an acceleration in the number of UCITS being set up, but it will remain always being driven by the hedge fund side.